Hello and welcome to the Women's Network. I'm Elke and I'm your host. Today we will have an absolutely wonderful show. It's very exciting, informative, and a lot of fun. Our topic today is women in film and television. And that could mean a lot. Now, I have heard quite a few times that women, when they get to be the age of 40 or 45, have a hard time, I'm talking about actresses in this case, have a hard time getting roles. I hear Meryl Streep talk about it all the time and many other actresses. So, but there are not only actresses out there. We have producers, we have directors, we have camera women, camera operators. We have all sorts of categories. And we have women in these categories. Not too many, but we will hear about it today. So without much further ado, I would like to introduce you to my wonderful guests. We have guests from, again, different categories in the film and television industry. And they will talk about women and their role and listen to it. Don't go away, not even for a minute. So let me introduce you to my first guest, I'm sorry, making a mistake already. Okay. Bonnie Dore. Bonnie Dore. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, I'm a producer, and I've been a producer, and it's hard to admit this on camera, but true. I've been a producer, producing syndicated network and theatrical motion pictures for next year 20 years. Hard to believe, but true. Painful. I started as a network executive at ABC, and before that I did syndicated programming for ABC. I worked in public television, and for the last 10 years I've had my own production company, and I've been, I like to think, eclectic, a Renaissance producer, maybe the last of the Renaissance producers. And I've done movies of the week for network television, cable television. I've done miniseries. I've done series. I've done half-hour comedy. I've done a number of different things, some of them that you might know. Please, I hope you do. You know, there's nothing that warms a producer's heart more than to say to someone, oh, well, I did Sins, the miniseries at CBS, the 7-hour miniseries, and they go, oh, I saw that. You're happy for a week. Because you figure there are only 7 people out there who ever see anything. But Sins was one of the miniseries that I did starring Joan Collins. See? I'm happy now. I'm happy forever. And Timothy Dalton and a host of others. And it was a very successful miniseries. I did a miniseries for HBO called Glory, Glory, which was a 4-hour miniseries that was actually a comedy, a drama, and a musical.
I think I saw that too.
Oh, love her already. Yeah, this is great. It was starring Ellen Greene, Richard Thomas, and James Whitmore. And I did a movie for NBC 2 years ago called The Jill Ireland Story, starring Jill Clayburgh. So I've done a lot of that kind of thing, and I enjoy it very much. But we were talking before we started that most people really don't know what a producer does. That included my own family. I don't think they still understand what I do. The only thing that my father continually asks is, it has something to do with the phone, right? You get on the phone and you like do stuff. And I said, yeah, that's it. But in television, separate from motion pictures, because they're really 2 different jobs, I'm an executive producer with my own production company, which means from the first minute there's an idea until the last interview is done after it's been aired, I'm involved. And it's...
that sounds like quite a job.
Well, you know, they think that, you know, we make all this money, when in truth, if you do it by the minute, we don't make very much money at all, you know.
Yeah.
You have to really want to get up every morning and do this, and to be able to take enormous amounts of rejection, not unlike an actor, and continually believe in your ideas. I think, you know, for a producer, you have to be sort of a jack of all trades and master of all trades. You have to be a lawyer and an agent and, you know, a writer's editor and someone who can talk to directors, talk to camera people, and understand their job and help them and support them in their job. And be able to be a publicist, you know, a star caretaker and wrangler. Very important job, star wrangler. And you have to be able to be a a production person, a post-production maven, someone who understands music. You really have to be able to do a lot, and I think after 20 years I really just finally understand the job, you know, at every level. I feel confident now I can really do it okay.
Oh, that's like an involvement.
I
think later on you have to give us more credit so we can tell you, so you'll feel good for the week or months, maybe years. The way it sounds, your credits sound great. Okay, well, thank you, Bonnie. Next to me is Kimberly Sizemore. She is first AD, stage manager, and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, let's see, my job is, I've been working in this business now. Well, I started when I was in high school. I started working as a technical assistant at the New York Shakespeare Festival, and I worked in theater for 9 years, and went through college and worked in the summer at the Delacorte Theater in New York, and decided I took a job at CBS News when I graduated from college. And I worked news for 2 years, and you know, is the body there? Can we come take pictures of it? And we would send crews out, and you would sit there and go, oh. So I didn't last very long. I decided I needed to go to Hollywood because I wanted to be in the movie business, the real movie business, not this real life stuff.
This is the place.
Much. So I came to Los Angeles. I worked for about a year doing whatever I could do, and I applied to AFI, where I met Karen, and went to AFI as a cinematographer because I had taken a course in New York, broadcast journalism, and I got bitten by the bug. So I went to AFI, and then I started shooting some things, and becoming a camera person was much more difficult than I had expected it to be. And I decided I would go into production. So in another form of production. So I went in I worked for a director. My best friend got a job in Hollywood, and he needed an assistant, and I said, you can hire me. And I said, of course you can, you're the boss. And he did. And I met other people and just continued to work for other people for a number of years as a production assistant. And then, you know, you just meet people and you make friends and they like you, and you work very, very hard to impress all these people so they'll call you back and ask you to come to work for them again. And it's been a long, hard road. I joined the Directors Guild in 1985, I think, yes. And started making more money, a little more money, and doing bigger jobs, and working as an assistant director and television as a stage manager. A number of shows, Different World and Head of the Class, and a lot of sitcoms, lots and lots of sitcoms. And then I was able to go back and forth to films. So I've done a lot of feature film, like the original Karate Kid, and I did a Rocky, and I've done a whole bunch of things that have been lots of fun, and made a lot of friends, and tried to make a little money. And now I find myself working more, doing commercials, working as just this main stage manager for a lot of
Are you kind of slowing down a little bit? Or?
Not so much slowing down. The business is drying up.
It is.
Yeah, you know, they're doing less and less things, and the pool is there, but, you know, there's so many people to choose from that, you know, you're competing. I go to interviews, all of my friends are there, and I want my friends to work, and I want to work too, but I'm glad for whoever gets the job, as long as it's the correct person for the job. So you find yourself in a very competitive situation, but I've been very fortunate, and I've been very able to switch and do a lot of different things. So, you know, I've done script supervising, I've done lighting, I've done camera work when I had to, and I've done a number of things, and eventually I hope to maybe try to produce something. I'm thinking along that way. I'm thinking more.
Well,
I can do it. I know I can do it. The implementation of it is very important in what I do. You know, you take the plan and you see it on paper, and then you get out there and you say, well, we're going to do this. This is what we're going to do today. And you give people pieces of paper, and it says it, and they say, we're not going to do this. We don't have time to do this, but they do it anyway. We don't want to do this, but it gets done, and then it's over and you get to go home. So my job, fortunately for me, I think ends when it's a wrap. We don't have to do any post-production, thank goodness, because by that time you're so steeped in it that you need to take a rest. But I love my work and I love this business. And
well, that's great. Well, it seems like you have been involved in quite a few areas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll talk about it a little later, because next to my left I have a camera person, cinematographer, Kristen Glover. Kristen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, thank you. Well, let's see. I've been in the business a long, long time, even longer than you, I think. I started out in 1971, and I was 10 years old then. No.
Yeah. We were in kindergarten together.
We were all 10 years old then. Yes. People say to me, when did I start my production company? When I was 5.
All child prodigies here.
Yeah. I studied painting, first of all, and but loved going to movies, and decided after I'd gotten my degree in painting that I wanted to be a filmmaker, and ended up in New York. Ended up on the East Coast first and knocked on doors in New York. Went through the East Coast Producers Directory alphabetically and called people and knocked on doors, and got temporary secretary jobs. And my first real film job was as a production assistant on a documentary called An American Family. That was a big documentary that got done in 1971 and 72, or 70 and 71. And that took me out to California. And after having spent a really painfully impoverished year in Manhattan, I decided that California was a better place to be. And I met a lot of people through that one job. I met a camera woman at that time, Joan Churchill.
Oh, sure.
Was shooting also. There were 2 camera units. Alan Raymond and Joan Churchill were shooting that picture. And so I had some inspiration from the beginning that it was possible for a woman to do this. So I decided to stay in LA, and I had not too many connections, and of course I didn't really know very much. I hadn't gone to film school, and I didn't really have any skills, so I continued to pursue production assistant work, and actually sort of conned my way into doing some costuming. And I became a costume designer / costume director of a commercial company for about a year and a half.
Not to interrupt you, but a lot of times when I ask people, how did you get into the movies or television? Oh, I knew somebody. And now this is the first one. First time I hear,
I
can't myself into it. I mean, do they have employment agency, or do they have a human resource department? Or
But, you know, I was discussing that with a colleague last week. We were having dinner, and she was saying how she had kind of lied her way into the business too, and made this false resume. I don't recommend this, especially for highly technical jobs. I don't recommend this.
All right, we'll cut this.
But in the beginning, when you really, if you don't have the good fortune to go to film school, and you don't have the good fortune to have connections, you know, I needed a job, and I knew how to buy clothes, and I figured that I could dress people.
Sure.
And I said, yes, I can do this, and in fact I could, and I did. And you know, I know that I wasn't Edith Head. I was just buying clothes for people. Anyway, through doing those jobs, I met different crew people, and I really wanted to do camera work. And I one of the first people who really helped me was Joe Steuben, who was Karen's love, and I met him on a commercial, and I asked him how could I learn to become a camera person. And I remember he was sort of working with the camera, and he was down on the floor working with the camera, and he looked up at me and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" You know, and I said, "Oh no, I really do, you know." And he said, "Are you really sure? Because it's really going to be painful, and it's going to be hard." And I didn't really have any understanding of what he meant by that. I just thought, well,
no problem, I can handle it, you know. And so he taught me some of the basics, how to load magazines and how to load film and how to put lenses on cameras and stuff like that. Anyway, from about that point on in 1972, I became a camera assistant.
Right.
And I worked on very simple shoots to begin with, and then, you know, increased my skills as time went on, and became a feature camera assistant. I worked with really good cameramen. I worked with Steve Burham. I worked with John Bailey. I worked with Jeff Kimball, who are now all, you know, big-time DPs. And after I had been a camera assistant for 14 very long years, I mean, the first 7 to 10 years were
Long years.
were fast enough, but the last 4 or 5 were, I really wanted to move on, and I moved up to operator. And so now I make my living primarily as a camera operator.
Great.
Feature films and TV, and occasionally I get to work as a director of photography.
Oh, nice. Well, see, it's hard for me to imagine at this point. I mean, cameraman, it's a men's profession. For some reason, I see a man behind the camera. I see men behind the camera.
So do most producers.
You know,
But not all.
Okay, my finger. But it is true.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, to round it out, our last guest, not the last though, we have a director, Karen Howard.
Yeah, I'm what you call a hyphenate, a writer-director. So
A writer-director.
I have 2 areas in which I can struggle.
Okay.
But I think it's fascinating. We're talking about all these ages. So you're saying 20, and I also have now been, this is my 20th year in TV and film and television.
Oh, no, I just said I'd been producing 20 years. I didn't add all the other stuff.
I have some to add to this. And Kristen, I have to be very grateful to that she asked Joseph that question that day, because Joe and I have been together for 18 years. Actually, 16 together, but we met 18 years ago. And so you knew him, you introduced us, and she knew him a year before I did. Or yeah. And well, to start out chronologically, I started out, first of all, like you, Elke. I'm from Germany and made the big jump over to Los Angeles. And I started out as a newspaper reporter, and then I was a hippie for a couple of years. And then I prolonged my youth by going to university, and I got a degree in sociology. And then I thought, no, I want to go back to journalism. And I got a job with German television, and again, that wasn't easy either. There were like 40 people on a waiting list, considering now all the competition. That was maybe not a lot. And I went to Baden-Baden and started out German TV in the news department for half a year, and then I had 2 major car accidents because I was on the road all the time, running after news and with meeting my crews and everything. And I thought maybe this isn't the right thing. I didn't get a degree to become a taxi driver, so I tried to stay more indoors. And after 1 year I had my own show, and it was a talk show and with films, and mainly directed at young audiences. And one day the phone rang and somebody said, I was very involved in the women's movement at the time. We need to write about the subject of abortion, and you know a lot about it. Would you do that? And so in 1 week I wrote a half-hour script, and the script was shot at Studio Hamburg, and I got a leave of absence from my TV station and said, I want to watch this, you know. And so on the second day, I found myself whispering to the actors, can't you do this a little different? And so the director got very angry with me, and he said, you know, if you women, and he used a very, very bad expression, he didn't say women, want to make movies, you know, make your own movies. And I thought, he's right, you know. And because this had been so easy this first time, I thought it was going to be like that forever. And I also had to learn, like, the years were adding up. You know, if you say to someone, okay, in my lifetime I've written 3 or 4 scripts on spec, which means nobody has paid you, it's your idea, you write it, you hope to sell it. If you add that up, you have you worked for free or for nothing for 3 years. So you need to always save up enough money to be able, for example, to write that spec script. And I think a lot of people don't really realize how many years are involved in all of our professions to get to a certain point, to learn what it's all about, to learn how the whole situation functions.
Well, it sounds to me like I have to talk to Karen afterwards. I have to talk to the producer afterwards to get out of this area.
Well, maybe one more word about this. So I also went to the film school, to the American Film Institute, and that was the jump over here, and then I stayed. And a credit where I'm always happy where people say, oh, I've seen that, my children have seen it, we really enjoyed it, is I wrote The Never Ending Story 2. And also the first draft for part 3 that's coming out next year. And it was just really a great time to be working with Warner Brothers and to go through those big gates and to have all those meetings. And I finally got to also shake the hand of Princess Anne in London at the Royal Command premiere. So for a while, this was really great fun. And then what somebody had already said before, after each success, it gets a little bit easier to start again. And I would say that is so. Yeah.
God, it sounds wonderful. Well, all your beginnings, I mean, it sounded like it was difficult, but then as time went on, and I guess with more knowledge, you sort of knew what direction to take or what to take on, or...
Well, actually, I'm going to put in a plug right up front for not only film school, which is where I went as well, to the University of Michigan Film School, but which I think is a wonderful base. It doesn't necessarily, you don't even have to finish. I mean, what's really important to get out of film school is whatever you need, but it is important to get an overview. One of the problems I have as a producer is that they send me a lot of people to interview, you know, I mean, interns or, you know, people that I'm hiring on the staff, and so often they come in and they don't know anything, you know, and it's hard. And I'm very understanding about not knowing something, and I want people to learn, and I actually have given more people a chance than a lot of people I know. But it's really difficult if they don't have any background at all. So what I usually encourage is if they don't have time to go to film school full-time, that at least they take some classes, I mean, which is what Kimberly did. She wanted to learn about it, so she took a class in cinematography, so she started to get a broad-based perspective. It really helps when you're starting out, because the rest of the time, if you just take small jobs, it's difficult. You're kind of piecing it together and trying to figure it out on your own. And the other thing that I really want to plug is there's an organization in Los Angeles and worldwide called Women in Film.
Yeah.
Women in Film is something I've been, and Karen as well, deeply involved in. Women in Film is 22 years old. Started with 9 women in T.G. Wilkerson Cassell's office at the Hollywood Reporter. And 22 years later, there are 2,700 women in Los Angeles alone
2,700
who belong to Women in Film. And you must pass a very sort of stiff incoming interview, sponsorship, et cetera, to get in. It's like the Academy. And we've discovered that we now have, believe it or not, you're going to love this, we now have 22 chapters in the United States and worldwide.
That's amazing.
My
Yeah.
God. That's incredible. Well, I'm glad we have that organization, Women in Film.
Because it's an extraordinary organization.
I must say, like,
certainly
you know,
benefited from
very
it.
early on, for example, Bonnie would grant me some time.
But I met you through Women in Film.
Right, and she was
You know.
always so encouraging, and that was really helpful to say, well, if this doesn't work, maybe try it there.
Right.
I would say all my
Or pick up the
close
phone.
friends in town I've met through Women in Film. Actually, after I finished the American Film Institute, the film school, I stayed in touch maybe with 1 or 2 people, but I really got involved in Women in Film, and I learned. I was served on the board for 2 years. I could just hear how executives talked, what they talked about, what they were critical about. It helped a lot to understand that functioning
Perspective.
that perspective and get that perspective. And then very concretely, my first job, I'm also a member of the Directors Guild. My first job I got through a Women Film member. And I've been helped a lot by women and in the different workshops. And even now, I recently, I got a response for a screenplay I'm sending out, and if I mention to some of the women, you know, this came to me through Women Film or something, you know, at least people respond to you.
Yeah.
T.G.'s
it is
answer about this is always, there is a boys' club, and it's very definitely there. And so what she decided to do was to have a girls' club.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And we actually now have male members of Women in Film who are supportive to us, and they pay very heavy dues, financially too.
Yeah. I was a little
to be
skeptical
supportive.
about.
No, it was
But
worked
isn't-
wonderfully.
Yeah.
It really has.
Don't we still hear, like, for instance, I can think of Barbara Streisand, for instance. She,
a member of Women in Film.
She, I mean, every time she does something, and she does it to perfection, from what I feel. And I also hear that she's being put down a lot, like she's, you know, this and that, and she wants this, and she's incredible to work, I mean, not very good to work with and whatever. Now, what is it? What about if a man would
Well, I think
demand this,
Kristen has-
this respect and whatever? I mean,
This
Well,
is actually something
I-
from a women
we
in
don't,
film luncheon.
unfortunately, we don't have much time, so if we can, like,
I'll bring it out right away. I brought with me because I thought it was
Oh,
so
good,
apropos
good,
to the
great,
subject matter
right.
of this panel. The real news, women in film, real news, but you weren't going to see it, so I don't want to. I'm just going to read it, but it's the Women in Film newsletter from July of 1992, which was after Barbra Streisand spoke at the Crystal Awards, the Women in Film Crystal Awards.
She was our keynote speaker. yes.
Right, and I was there, and it was really very inspiring to hear her speak. And she ran down a list of comparisons of how men and women are seen, at least in her opinion, and I have to say I agree with her, in the film business. If he is seen as commanding, she is demanding, the comparison of the situation. He's forceful, she's pushy. He shows leadership, she's controlling. He's committed, she's obsessed. He's persevering, she's relentless. He sticks to his guns, she's stubborn. He's assertive, she's aggressive. And the list went on, and I have to say, I could be making this up, but I seem to remember that she said, he's a genius, she's a bitch.
You remember correctly.
And it doesn't matter really what you may think of her films, whether you think they're great or whether you think they're not so great. I mean, she's really accomplished a lot, and I
Extraordinary
really
amount.
admire her. And I agree with her completely. I'm afraid it's true. It's
well,
the way
see, that's
it's
just
seen.
it. There
Scary,
are a
but it is
lot
true.
of wonderful women out there, and they do get recognition, but this recognition is also an obstacle again, or not so much an obstacle. I mean, I hear people put them down for this recognition, this
Well, it's
great
very difficult.
accomplishment.
Well, that's
And-
why Women in Film has a set of awards called the Crystal Awards, which is to honor women in the business who have accomplished a certain amount, because it's really necessary. There really was no other way.
Right.
To just point to it, you know, and that there are women and what they've done. And I love to go to the crystals because every time it makes me cry. And because the speeches are so wonderful, and I go like, wow, this person has done this and this and this, and it's always a very beautiful experience. And also, I mean, we also get a little impatient sometimes with other women. I mean, it's not necessarily that it's easier to work with another woman. And it's just also is always a good reminder of, okay, you know, you sometimes have to go through rough times, even working with one another, but then, you know, there's a great result. And
Right. Well, I just got the signal. I mean, I can't believe 30 minutes are
Oh no.
over and done with.
I can't
It started, my goodness.
We haven't
haven't
talked
said
about the
anything.
nitty-gritty yet.
Oh, well, you'll just have to have us
So
back.
Right. We'll definitely have to
4
come back
hour
and make it a
Yes.
second episode.
I think so too.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank all of you, Bonnie, Kimberly, Kristen, and Karen. It's so nice for you to come. I mean,
Thank
it,
you very
it was
much.
just wonderful. I'm really sorry we couldn't go on, but
Yes.
maybe they will let us do another
hope
30
so.
minutes after this. Anyway, again, thank
We
you
have so many
much.
stories.
I know. We want to tell you how great you were and how great you were so that you feel good.